Hello, and welcome to this live broadcast on coaching with 360-degree feedback, helping your team to love their feedback. Now, the best 360 feedback conversations are those that build awareness of the person receiving the feedback and motivate them to change and grow and develop. Now, if you're using 360 either as a manager or in an organization, and those conversations are not positive or motivating, or maybe not even happening, then it may be time to upskill in coaching techniques, particularly using 360 feedback. So on this webinar today, I'll cover how to read and understand the 360 report, using coaching skills and the 360 data effectively in a conversation, feedback skills and how to deal with difficult feedback, and helping the individual to build a smart development plan with 360 feedback. So this talk is aimed at anybody who's a team leader or a manager or anyone that's being asked to coach their team members through their 360 feedback results. Or you may want to train other people in how to do this. So if we start with why is coaching necessary when someone has a 360 feedback report? Well, you could say they've got their report, they've got their information. Why do they need a coaching session? Well, if you've ever had feedback in writing or somebody else has had a feedback report, they may not understand it fully. They may focus on one negative response rather than all the positive results. They may ignore the feedback altogether, or they may reject it. So they may have a number of different responses. So another response is they might just put it in a drawer and forget about it. So actually, if they do that, they may be missing out on the benefit that this type of feedback can offer them. Because 360 is one of the most effective ways of gaining insights into strengths and development areas. And the more focused the feedback is on key competencies, the better that the learning and development can be directed. So as a manager or a team leader, I'm the absolute best person to help a team member with their feedback. I know what work they do, what they have to achieve. I know them as a person as well as a team member, and I understand the issues and challenges that they face. And most of all, as a team leader or a manager, I have the ability to give them the opportunity to learn new skills and build their confidence. So the first section is the report. Now, the report, I would strongly advise, which I'm sure you would, is to read the report thoroughly before you sit down with the individual whose report it is. So first of all, get a copy of the team member's report. Now, there are a lot of different types of 360 report depending on who provides the tool. The tool provider will usually give some guidance about how the data has been analyzed and shown. But the key elements that would be in a normal 360 report, let me share that with you, just to show you what a 360 report could look like and how the data could be used. So I'm just going to share a sample report, and I'm going to run you through this report for you to have a think about what the data is saying, and as an individual who's going to coach, how you would use that data. So this is a report for a fictional person, and there's some information here about the report, so I'm not going to spend any time on that. So you can see, I hope you can see clearly this first page, which shows the people who've given feedback. So we can see 4 direct reports, their line manager and their peers have given feedback. So that gives them an idea of the numbers that have responded from each group that will be a part of the report. Most reports will show the feedback for what we call skill sets, but these could be competency headings or competency groups. In this particular report, we have a graph that shows the individual's ratings in red for each item, for each skill set, compared with the feedback from others. So you're already starting to get a feel for the areas of strength and the areas that potentially could be worth developing. These are the skill sets that are ranked. So we can see here building customer relationships has the highest ranking, managing and motivating the team has the lowest ranking. So we're starting to get a picture. And then in this report, we rank the top skills and the bottom skills. And again, when you're preparing, these are really important items to be aware of. And as a team leader or manager, you may already have an insight into some of these areas. We also, in our reports at Track, we include greatest variations. So skills that the individual has overrated the most. So we can see here that, as an example, listens to feedback and acts on it is one of the feedback statements that's been rated. We can see that everybody, the average rating from everyone else is 3. He has given himself a 5. So there's a big gap between his rating and the rating of his colleagues. So there's a difference in perception there, which again, as the person that's going to be coaching, is well worth having a think about and how you're going to approach that conversation. You also have some skills that he has underrated himself, where the team has said, actually, he's got 3.3 in this particular one, helps the team in setting themselves challenging goals, whereas he's marked himself low. So actually, that's quite a positive response. So again, bear in mind what the positive messages are as well. Again, in our reports, we then break each competence, each skill set down into the different skills that go into that competence or skill set. And then we can see very clearly the differences between the green, who are the peers, the individual. Actually, we've got other group here, but let's focus on the individual, the reports, the line manager, and the peers. So again, this is really easy data to pick up, but very, very useful for you to be prepared in the conversation. And in this report, as well as the data, which is incredibly useful, as we can see here, he's rated himself a 3 on this. The manager has only rated him a 2.5. The direct reports have only rated him a 2.5. And this is consistent almost throughout all of the motivating and managing the team questions. So there's something there about how the team feels in respect of how he motivates and manages the team. So we also want to make sure that we pick up on the comments that are being given, because again, these are very useful for putting the rating feedback into context. So line manager, peers, direct reports and self, in this case, have given textual feedback. So really, many reports might have more data than this, but actually that's really what you need to pick up. Key messages, key positives, key development areas that are consistent across all of the groups that are providing feedback for this individual. So that is a quick look at what a report would look like, or how you might start to interpret a 360 feedback report. So of course, one key point to be careful of is you may start getting your own views, but don't go into the meeting in a telling mode. Go into the meeting with an open mind and in a coaching frame of mind. So this takes us on to the next section, which is using coaching skills plus the 360 effectively. So first of all, I've mentioned a coaching frame of mind. So what is that? Asking questions rather than giving instructions or telling, and listening rather than talking, and giving the individual time to reflect, to consider, and to speak. I find a great model that really helps me with this type of coaching is the GROW model. You'll be familiar with GROW, goals, reality, obstacles, and way forward as a coaching model. And it's great to use that, because that keeps you focused on where you are in the conversation. So talk about goals. Where is the individual currently? Where do they want to get to? And the goal has to be defined in such a way that it's very clear to them when they've achieved it. Now you've got R, which is reality. And this is where the 360 really becomes useful, because the 360 is the reality in the GROW model. So this is where you want to get to. Where are you now? And what's the 360 telling you? The O is for obstacles and options. And again, the 360 can be a very powerful tool to both highlight what the obstacles might be, and that depends on the feedback you get. So for example, your goal might be to get your team working more independently and more effectively to run a project without you supervising them all the time. But if you're not providing them with the right opportunities or the right, maybe you're micromanaging them, even though you want them to work on their own. So that should come out from the 360, and therefore that's an obstacle to the goal, and therefore that's a very clear message as to what you need to do in terms of options. And the way forward, that's the W in the GROW model, is about transferring the options and the feedback into action steps, so way forward. And that's the development plan part of the discussion. So what next? So you're ready to have the coaching conversation. Of course, you'll have scheduled this in advance, given their report maybe a day in advance of the meeting, and arrange somewhere quiet and private where you won't be interrupted. So the coaching conversation, I find, would, and in research as well, it's great to start with, I'm here to help you to get where you want. And this is important because some people might come to a 360 meeting to feel that the feedback is being done to them. So as a coach, you're here to help them to get what they want. So I think that's a really important first step in this coaching conversation. Have you had time to read your report? Sometimes we just launch into the conversation without checking that. If they have, that's great. If they haven't, give them some time to read through the report. What thoughts or feelings did you have about the report? So it's important to give them a chance to say what their initial thoughts were, because again, you're making it a two-way conversation rather than something that's being done to them. What did you expect? Were there any surprises? What do you think were the key messages? Do you agree? And this gives you not only information about what they have read so far from the report, but also their mood and their feeling about the feedback. So you get a feeling, are they positive? Broadly, are they negative? Are they confused? So that's a really important part of the conversation. Next up, before we look at the feedback, let's take a minute to review your goals. So we're talking about the G in GROW. And then, when we've done that, let's take a detailed look at the feedback. Where are you now? And therefore, this is when we come to the feedback report that I shared with you. And the questions, useful coaching questions around this, working through the report that you've been given, or that the individual's been given. What are the key messages in the feedback in this report? Do they fit with your perceptions? Where do they differ with your perceptions? How might this have happened? Can you think of an example where this might have happened that makes your opinion different from another person's? What feedback would you like to discuss or explore further? And importantly, what areas are most important for your role? Hopefully the feedback report will deal with all the areas that are important for the organization, but there may be some priorities that you want to pick up with the individual that are more important for them than other areas. Make it very personal to them. And also remember to refer back to the goals. How does the feedback relate to their goals? One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit more detail in the report was the written feedback. So if I share with you again, What I mean is the feedback that's down here. I haven't put too many comments in this example, but normally you would have more written feedback here. So a couple of points on the written feedback. These should, as we've done here, they should be anonymous. They should help the coachee to see the positive comments. And again, coachees will tend to see if there's any negative feedback. They'll tend to focus. So help them to focus on the positive comments as well. Don't let them fall into who said this. I want to know who said this. This won't help them to get the best from their feedback. So help them to focus correctly on the wider messages, consistent messages from the report. Now, having said that, there may be some outlying ratings or written comments. So there may be some unusual ratings. Maybe one person has given a low rating for a particular area or a comment. Now, we are looking for consistency, but if they focus on an outlying comment, you'll need to not dismiss it, but actually discuss it with them. So the question would be, is it relevant? Given that nobody else has given this feedback, how relevant do you think it is? Or is there a bit of truth in it? And why might that be? So then the next thing that we often are concerned about when we're coaching with 360 is if we get the individual gets difficult feedback. Everyone dreads having to discuss difficult feedback or negative feedback. So what do we mean by difficult feedback? Well, normally it would be low ratings, or in the written feedback, it might be badly worded feedback, a criticism of the person rather than the skills or behavior. So for example, it might say, Joe is a bad manager. Now, that is a generalization that's not going to help me to become a better manager. So, and it's also very difficult to understand what the issue is. So sometimes that can be quite painful. So again, as the coach, you need to help people to understand what that might mean and help them to discover what that might mean. Maybe look back at the other feedback, see where that might be badly worded, but there might be some truth in it. And it's also useful to, just from my experience, having worked in this area for a very long time, I've only seen one instance where feedback was really, really hurtful or offensive. And what we did there was we actually pulled that feedback because of the way it was worded. So that's something that you can do as a coach. You might want to take the initiative if the feedback is really, really unacceptable, offensive, and just wrong, to take that out and not share it. But that's kind of up to you as the coach to make that judgment. So what happens when somebody does get unexpected feedback? And you might actually experience this as a coach. Let me share with you what that might look like. Actually, I don't have a slide for it, so let me talk you through it. When somebody gets unexpected feedback, there is a set of responses, and it's been likened to, obviously it's not as serious a situation, but the stages of grief. So when you get an unexpected news that's hard to take, the first thing that people experience is shock and denial. So you might hear from the individual, if they're very upset about the feedback, I can't believe this. This is not valid feedback. And there's a good reason why I've done this. So they effectively deny the feedback. There's another stage, which might be withdrawal. They don't want to, they just don't want to talk about it. It's fine, I'll forget about it. They might be angry, and they might question the motivation and loyalty of the colleagues. Once they've gone through these stages, and they might go back and forward, people go through a testing. What's the real message? What does it really mean? And what are the consequences? And this is why, as a coach, and your coaching skills are very important to help them to work this out. And then finally, acceptance and moving forward. I hear and value the message. Okay, I'm not happy about it, but I get it. And that's the first step in accepting and moving forward and learning from the feedback. And we've worked with many people with feedback, and some people have said to us, actually, the best feedback they got was the hardest, because that was what they didn't want to hear, but actually that's really what they needed to hear. So again, as a coach, it's about being aware of that and allowing the person to go through those stages and maybe having further conversations with them. The main thing is to keep talking until they are okay with it. And the key is to help them to take the feedback on board, how to reframe the feedback. How could this feedback help or make a difference? Could it? And if so, how are you going to use it? And then the final bit of the coaching session with the 360 is building a smart development plan with the 360 feedback. So we've talked about the reality, which is the R in grow. So the O in grow is the notes and discussion points that you've made in the conversation to take into the development plan. Now, in the report that I've been sharing with you, we do have some development action points, which in this case, the report auto-generates based on the feedback they've had. So if you've got a 360 that does this, then that's fantastic, because you've already got some development action points you can discuss. Say, this is what the feedback is saying your action points are. And they may be what the organization is offering, or they may be very simple, like have a conversation with somebody, do a training session, shadow someone. So again, this is an important part of the conversation. So we can see here as this individual, these are the areas that have been identified as their area, the biggest areas for their development. And we can see, delegates tasks that will help the team. So, take the learning to delegate course on LinkedIn, for example. And these can be customized based on the 360 that you're using. In this report, we also take them then to a development plan, which reviews the feedback that they've had and allows you and the individual to set some clear development goals within a time frame, an action, and dependencies, what support they need to achieve those goals. So whether this is in the report that you're using or not, it's a very important part of the discussion. So yes, use the development plan that you use or the one in the report to do that. And ask the individual how you can support them to achieve those development points. And then don't forget to follow up. So set a date for the next discussion. Now that can be in a couple of months. Even if you work with the individual on a day-to-day basis, it's good to have a session away from the day-to-day on how they've done, what progress they've made in their goals. So that covers all the items. So in this broadcast, we've talked about how to read and understand the 360 report and to prepare for the conversation, how to use coaching skills and questions, and I've given you lots of examples of the type of questions to ask, plus the 360 data in the coaching conversation, how to deal with difficult feedback, how to help the individual to deal with difficult feedback, and how to help them build a smart development plan with 360 feedback. So I hope that this session on coaching with 360-degree feedback has given you some tips and hints on helping your team to love their feedback. If you have any questions, please do direct message me on LinkedIn. I'll be very happy to answer those questions. And I look forward to seeing you again on another broadcast, which I hope will happen very soon. Have a great day.